DP World Australia was hacked at the weekend, and it brought all the port container movements to a complete standstill. Government, security authorities, police, and the internal investigations are now underway. How is it possible that a large company of this stature was hacked? I mean, surely they need adequate security features in place, or at least have done some penetration testing to avoid such a breach.
Well, I guess first of all, it's not uncommon. I mean, especially here in Australia, we've seen so many data breaches that have been very serious of very large organisations just in the last 12 and a little bit months, let alone what we see globally. So organisations suffering data breaches or ransomware attacks, as it may be in this case, are not unusual at all. How does it happen? Well, they're very large organisations with lots of moving parts, and it only takes the attackers once to get it right. And they're in. Unfortunately for us trying to defend, we have to get it right every single time. Bad guys are only going to get it right once.
Yeah. Does it leave other logistic companies now more vulnerable to these attacks?
Well, I don't think it makes them any more vulnerable that we've had this incident with DP World, any more so than it makes telcos any more vulnerable after Optus last year, or private health insurers any more vulnerable after Medibank. I think, if anything, it's just a reminder that everyone is under attack, because there's an enormous amount of value for attackers in gaining a foothold in these companies.
Yeah. I mean, is there an increase in Australia, like you've said, but is it globally? And why so? Is it because it gets easier? Is there more at stake? Like you've said, ransom. Why is it so on an increase?
Look, it's certainly changing. I wouldn't say it's getting any easier, but why is it increasing? Well, first of all, it is definitely increasing globally. This is not just an Australian situation. We're on the internet, just like everyone else, and that's why we're a target. But we have many more organizations, many more websites, many more people, many more hackers. I mean, of course, everything is just growing and growing, and particularly over the last few years, where so much of the business that we do, the shopping that we do, has gone online. There is now a lot more attack surface than what there was only a few years ago.
Yeah. What is the impact on customers in our logistics world, on consumers, or even companies?
Well, of course, it depends on the sort of organisation. In terms of DP World, obviously, there's a whole bunch of shipping containers that got held at port and didn't get redistributed out to their final destinations. So how does that affect consumers? Well, it could be, a lot of the headlines have said, will they stop Christmas? Will you not get your Christmas things? I think that they'll be back up before then. That they're talking about sort of a period of a few days. But of course, all of this is part of the pipeline of components. And we saw during COVID, what happens when various parts of the manufacturing process get disrupted. Suddenly you can't buy a new car because that little bit of the headlight wasn't available, or something similar to that. But, that said, they were very prolonged periods of outage. Hopefully for DP World, it's only going to be a very short outage.
Yeah. Are there any common vulnerabilities that large companies are not aware of, for instance, or overlook? And how can they prevent this?
Well, inevitably, there are certainly some things that were overlooked. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here having this discussion. Yeah. But in terms of, is there a common thread? Look, it's usually a combination of things. Lack of technical control. So it could be anything from running vulnerable software, which has had findings in it, but have been patched and they didn't update. Very often, it's a combination of human factors as well. So was there a human that installed something that they shouldn't have, or ran a program that shouldn't have happened, or gave out information to a third party they shouldn't have? And what we are seeing is there's certainly many of these attacks do get very sophisticated these days. Some of them are very, very simple. The Optus situation in 2022 was very, very simple. But things like DP World, particularly where there are ransomware crews involved that are very professional criminal organizations, it can be quite sophisticated.
Yeah. Do you have any top software that you would advise our customers, or to use to prevent these kind of attacks?
Look, what I'd suggest is the ASD has got a really good set of guidance. They call it the Essential 8. And it's just a set of guidance about how organizations should do some pretty fundamental things, which include things like keeping software updated and patched. I've seen speculation online that DP World was running software with a known high severity vulnerability, which may be the way that you got in. Now, we know empirically across many decades of information security that keeping software patched and maintained is a really essential component of keeping secure. So I would suggest, rather than saying, go and buy this product, make sure the products you have at an absolute baseline are maintained.
How does these attacks actually impact the public's trust in digital infrastructure? We know that there's a huge movement in digitalization, but obviously as companies, how do they keep that trust now?
Look, it's interesting. I think probably the broader question is, how do you keep the trust of your customers as opposed to the trust in the digital technologies per se? Because we really, as customers, don't have a lot of say in the fact that organizations are digitizing everything. And very often it's for our benefit because we want things faster or more cost effectively. I think the challenge here is how, after incidents like this, can trust be regained? And again, we've seen this with multiple companies, very, very big brands in Australia just over the last year and a bit.
Yeah. Last question. What, in your view, what is the evolution of cybersecurity strategies in response to the increased sophistication of these cyber criminals?
It's just a continual game of one-upmanship. So every time we create new defenses and new controls, someone finds another way around it. I mean, things like multi-factor authentication are a great example. I mean, this was a great way of stopping attackers who have the username and the password. So we've seen attackers to pivot to mechanisms where they can then obtain the one-time password or gain access to authentication material after you've logged on and after you've already provided your second factor. So we're doing good stuff, but we raise the bar, and then the attackers, of course, have to find another way over that bar or find another path of least resistance. So I think more than there being sort of a single thing, that this is something that just requires ongoing investment and ongoing attention in order to stay ahead of everyone.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate all your insights, Troy.
My pleasure. See you later.